right. Welcome once again, everyone. Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Changing the Narrative webinar titled Can Plant-Based Diet Solve Food Insecurity? Or in Malay, bolehkah diet berasaskan tumbuh-tumbuhan menyelesaikan masalah keselamatan makanan? That is weird to say, but yeah. So Changing the Narrative is a collaboration project between Animal Alliance Asia and Samayu to discuss how racial, gender, and other forms of inequity are affecting animal advocacy in Asia. I see a Samayu representative here. And I would just like to give a shout out to them. Like Samayu has been doing such amazing work for the animals and advocating plot-forward food systems. So like, please check them out at samayu.org. So we have had several Changing the Narrative workshops in the past few months in countries in Asia, namely Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, Pakistan, India, and Nepal. This session will focus on the topic of food security in Malaysia and how going towards a plant-rich diet can help ensure food security. So we have two amazing speakers here today to share their work. They will each give a presentation and then we will have the chance for a Q&A. But just ask your questions in the chat as we go along. So first up, let's just introduce Dr. Nadia. So Dr. Nadia is an epidemiologist with over 10 years of research experience. She began her career as a researcher championing sexual and reproductive rights of women in Asia and the Pacific. She then worked around cancer treatment and the impact of cancer on the quality of life for Asian women. Most notably, she conducted the first clinical trial in Asia that studied the relationship between consuming soy and decreased risk of breast cancer among perimenopausal Malaysian women. And currently, she is a Post-Doctoral Research Fellow at the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health. Her research is primarily focused on nutrition, food insecurity, and its intersection with health of the planet and its people. Dr. Nadia and her colleagues have published a research paper titled Addressing Food Insecurity and Climate Change in Malaysia. And one of the recommendations I found interesting was on changing food systems. So yeah, that's how I got to know about her work. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Dr. Nadia to talk more about her work.
Thank you so much, Diana. Let me share my slides. That was a really generous introduction. Let me this first. Can you see my slide okay? Perfect. Thank you. So I want to start by saying that I am not an expert on food insecurity. I'm also not an expert on planetary health. And as Diana pointed out, my background has mostly been about the intersections between nutrition and health. But about a year ago, I came across this wonderful opportunity at the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health. And I was very intrigued. And as I learned more about what planetary health encompasses, I was captivated and I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So today I'm going to share with you what I've learned over the last year and also some of the work that I've been working on and some of the passions that are dear to my heart. Okay, so there are probably a bunch of slides and graphs and images that can show you to show that climate change is a severe problem that we're facing right now. But I think this one sentence captures it all perfectly, which is that we have mortgaged the health of future generations to realize economic and developmental gains in the present. This is just a direct way of saying that the systems that we've built so far are no longer sustainable for our environment and for us. And this is evident by the things that are happening in our environment, right? So this picture represents our planetary boundaries, and 6 out of the 9 boundaries are breached. And this includes things that you're very familiar with, like climate change. We know that's happening, but also some things like the integrity of our biosphere, how we use land, the freshwater changes, as well as nitrogen contamination of soil and water and things like that. And what's concerning here is that, we're not just breaching these boundaries, but we're in that red high risk zone already. But it's not, we're at that sort of inflection point where we can still turn things around. And so that is what Planetary Health is attempting to do. It's about a solutions-oriented approach to take on the actions that we've performed so far that affect our environment. And essentially what it is, it's about stopping climate change from accelerating further, and for the problems that we already have because of the changes to our environment, mitigating that, and for the things that we cannot change, adapting to it. So these are sort of the approaches that we talk about when we talk about solutions-oriented approach to tackling climate change and environmental change. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on food, and because that's the topic that we're talking about here today. So I'm going to talk about food security, climate change, and how that impacts human health. And what it is really is a vicious cycle, right? The food systems that we have built today are one of the major contributors to climate change. And in turn, the changing climate affects and threatens food security. Both of these have direct and significant consequences on human health. So this is going to be central to what I'm talking about today. We'll start with the biggie, right? So our food industry accounts for 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's a quarter of these GHG, as we call it. And so this diagram here has sort of what are the biggest carbon footprints, and beef and lamb, so red meats, tend to have the highest carbon footprint. You might notice some things that are maybe you didn't think would be on that list. So for example, chocolate is number 4 on that list. And you'll see that it has a range of impact, right? It can be low impact, it can be closer to average impact. And that sort of gets you thinking about, it's not just about the food itself, but how the food is processed, how it's manufactured, how it's transported. How do all these things then contribute to the carbon footprint? It's about thinking from end to end, from the growing of your fruits, vegetable, rearing of beef, of cows, sorry, to production, to transport, to waste, end-to-end look at carbon footprint. So that's one aspect, carbon footprint. Another way of looking at how big of an impact our food systems have on the environment is to look at this, for example, right? What's in a burger? Again, looking at it from end to end, we're talking about 3,000 liters of water being used to produce one beef burger. So to put it into context, we individually drink about 3 liters of water a day. So this is 1,500 days worth of water to produce one burger for your consumption. So when you put things into perspective like that, you really start to understand what the impact your choices have on the environment. And then at the end of that spectrum is waste, food waste specifically. So this is data from the US, and I think Malaysia probably has similar data, if not probably a little bit worse. But about 40% of our food goes uneaten, and that ends up in landfills, which then contributes to methane emissions. So it counts for 1/6 of methane emissions. And of course, billions of dollars is wasted in this process. So we've briefly touched the surface on how food production systems give rise to climate change. And now we're looking at the other side of the coin, where climate change is then going to impact food security. In Malaysia, we've noticed, worsening floods in the last couple of years. It's happening in places that are usually not prone to floods. And this is concerning, right? And especially for our granaries where we grow our rice crops and things like that. I think in the data here is from the 2014 flood, where up to $300 million was lost due to damaged crops and lost infrastructure. And there's also a lot of talk about, how our rising temperature is going to affect our ability to produce crops at the level that we're used to. It's projected that in the next decade, we're going to see a reduction in the amount of rice that we can produce by up to 30%. And that's huge because we are currently probably only about 60% sufficient for rice. And if that reduces even further, we're not going to have enough rice to support our population. So that brings us to the question of food security, right? What do we mean by food security? Because what we've been talking about so far is how climate change affects our country's ability to provide food for its people. And that's one way to explain food security. Another way to look at food security is at the individual level. And I think this definition speaks a lot to that. This is the official UN definition, where it's really about making sure that everyone at any time has enough access to food that is safe and nutritious, and it meets their needs. So it's actually very simple. Everyone has food that they need, right? But this is not the case most of the time. And the issues around food security is very different from country to country, from time period to time period. So at this point in time, so when we're talking about what the future looks like with food insecurity under climate change conditions, if nothing changes and we are going to continue to have a lot of climate change, we're also going to expect that that insecurity is going to get more and more in our region, right? So compared to what it is now, we definitely see a higher risk of a higher vulnerability to food insecurity in 2050. And I'd like to share with you something that we just submitted for publication, which is to look at the impacts of climate change in Malaysia and some of the health risk factors that lead to health outcomes or health problems in Malaysia, right? And food insecurity is one of those major health risk factors that is induced by climate change. And what we're going to see with food insecurity is malnutrition. So especially in children, where you see stunting or wasting happening at very young ages that will disrupt their developments. Right? On the flip side, there is a problem with obesity, because if you don't have access to nutritious food, your cheaper, more shelf-stable alternative is these highly processed foods that are rich in refined grains, in added sugars, in saturated fat, and these are all going to contribute to obesity as well as non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, cancers, and so on. So food security is not just a problem in and of itself, it also contributes to many different health problems for us now and in the future, unless we do something about it. So as you can see, what would be ideal is if we can somehow overhaul food systems, which, Deanna was talking about, and we talked about food systems and how we need to change them. That would be the ideal scenario, overhaul our food systems, But that is a difficult task. It involves a lot of different stakeholders. It involves a lot of trade agreements and also, livelihoods. We can't just go around changing people's livelihoods. We have to do this in a way that is systematic and takes into account everyone who's involved. So while that is happening, and we should be working towards that, there are also things that we can do at the individual level, and which is really what I'm working on mostly, which is, how do we change the way we consume food? Not just the way we choose food, but also how do we reduce food waste? So in this chart, we see that reducing food waste and adopting a plant-rich diet is going to be the two most impactful things an individual can do to reduce their carbon footprint. And I wanted to share this with you. So this is a concept that came up maybe just a couple of years ago. It's called the Planetary Health Plate. It is similar to a lot of healthy eating dietary recommendations. But this one is slightly unique in the way that it accounts for both our human health as well as environmental health. So this diet is designed to take into account these two things. And what the diet is really about is really increasing fruits and vegetables, as we all know we should, increasing grains, and decreasing the things that are bad for us, like animal proteins, added sugars, and also dairy. Increasing plant proteins like legume is a big factor in the planetary health plate. And this diet, if everyone in the world adopts this diet, it's supposed to prevent up to 10 million deaths a year globally and reduce about 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions, which is a sizable amount. So changing diets alone has such a big impact on the environment. And again, I want to share with you some things, some data that we're working on, which is currently unpublished and hoping to be published soon. But what we did was compare how the Malaysian diet fares next to this planetary health diet. How are we doing so far? And what we observe is we have a lot of this blue bar, right? That's grains and tubers. And really, it's a lot of refined grains. So your white rice, white breads, all these ultra processed foods, these are refined grains, which are not so good for you. We also have a lot of the peach and I want to say brownish bar. Um, these are your red meats and added sugars. So two things that are not so good for you again, but we are consuming in excess. And the thing that we should be consuming, which is legumes or plant-based proteins, in pink at the bottom, we're not consuming just near enough. We're doing really poorly with that. So just looking at this, you can see that if we can switch from red meats or meats to legumes, just make that one big switch, it's already going to create such a big impact. And the other switch would be to switch your refined grains to whole grains. So two switches, and we can be quite aligned to the planetary health diet. But we're doing good on some accounts, right? We're consuming okay amounts of fruits and vegetables, but we could do better. And we're already taking low dairy because Asians are generally lactose intolerant, so that's good. But there, with these two major switches, so more legumes, more whole grains, we're gonna see a big difference in our diet and also impact on the environment. I want to show you this as well, and I know it's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try and walk you through this because I think it's relevant to our talk today. What's this showing is that there are some variations in terms of by ethnicity, by gender, by area, whether you're in rural or urban settings, in terms of how closely the diets adhere to that planetary health diet. So higher on the chart means that they adhere more. Low on the chart means they are not so it's not so closely aligned to planetary health diet. And what you can see also is that the bubbles are of different sizes, right? And the bigger the bubble it's more food insecurity that was reported in that group. So we're starting to see a trend here where, uh, the bigger bubbles are somewhat at the bottom of this chart. And what that really indicates is that people who report that they are not eating enough also do not have enough variety in their diet. So, um, but at the same time, they actually have sufficient calorie intake. So, and that's the color, right? It's the darker the color, the more high in calories your diet is. It's telling us that people with poor diets have a lot of calorie intake, but these are coming from the unhealthy foods, the refined grains, the added sugar. So this is something that is unique. I think this is what food insecurity is in Malaysia. It's not just about not having enough, but it's also about not having enough variety, enough access to nutritious food um, in the country. And we can see some differences by urban and rural. That's the last column over there, where the rural settings tend to have poorer diets higher in calories, but also there's higher food insecurity. But there's hope, right? So we have one dot that's really high on that chart, and that's the Indian diet. So the Indian diet is pretty close to as close as Malaysia gets to the planetary health diet. And so that just indicates that we can do it. We can achieve this diet in Malaysia. It's culturally appropriate. We just need to make some changes. So I'm not gonna spend too much time talking, and I'd love to hear questions, but I also wanted to tell you a bit about the fun things that we do that's not research when it comes to food security and nutrition. And plant-based diets in particular. So we've been looking at the first column, you see a YouTube channel. So we have episodes of Planet Saving Meals where we attempt to recreate traditional Malaysian dishes by switching the meat into a plant protein. So this little snippet of a video is actually an attempt to make duck using bean curd skin. So if you want to check out the video, you can just go to our YouTube and look for Planet Saving Meals. You can watch the whole video there. We're also attempting to compile plant-based recipes into a planet-saving meals recipe book. So the deadline for that has passed, but look at our socials, and hopefully by next year, this book should be coming out. And we're collecting recipes from all around the world, not just from Malaysia. So it's going to be a nice, global recipe book that we're going to have. And the last thing I wanted to share with you is that we are now working with this really wonderful group called the Lost Food Project. So they are a group that looks at rescuing food that would typically go to waste. So what they do is they go to the markets, Pasar Borong, at the end of the day and rescue vegetables that would be otherwise thrown away. And then they take these vegetables to their warehouse, they clean it up, and then they send it off to the low-income communities or PPRs in designated areas. So this was a picture of us at their warehouse with these really fresh-looking vegetables that would have ordinarily gone to waste, but they are now taking this and giving it to the people who need it the most. So we're really excited to work with them and figure out how can we better measure their impact in terms of food waste and the impact on carbon footprint. So I want to end with this. I want to reiterate that, we tend to think about health like this, right? We think about health as clinics, as hospitals, as the surgery you got last year, or the health screening you went for last week, the medication you took this morning. But we really need to start shifting our thinking to think about health in this way. Nutritious food, green open spaces, physical activity. This is what health should look like. Um, and if we can prioritize this, I think it will be helpful for us and also for our environment. So with that, this is our socials. Please follow us, like us. We have interesting content sometimes. And so if you want to find out more about what we do, we don't just work on food security, we work on a whole range of things from air pollution to biodiversity conservation, and also ranging to, building healthy cities and things like that. So follow us to know what we do. But if you will permit me, I need to do some announcements. So we are hosting a Planetary Health Summit next year in April at Sunway University. It's the first time ever that this summit is going to be held in Asia, let alone Malaysia. It's usually held in Harvard and somewhere else. But yeah, it's usually in that part of the world. So it's the first time it's being held here. We are hosting it. We are very proud of it. And please, if you are interested in what I spoke about today, please come register now. If you are doing research in this area, or you have programs that sort of fit into this area of planetary health or solutions towards a better health for everyone, you can submit your abstracts. I think we're still taking abstracts up to end of this month. So come participate, talk about your research, talk about your programs. We look forward to seeing you there. And I'm going to end here. Thank you, Deanna. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Just keep your screen for a bit. I have like a
Sure.
quick question on like the slide on the graph. Wait, that's not a graph, but like the one with the urban and rural, the unpublished analysis.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Went too far
Wait.
back. Hang on. Okay, this one, right?
Wait, I hear an echo. Wait, this one, yeah. So just to be clear, like the higher it is on the index, the better.
The higher the better. So this Planetary
Okay.
Health Index is something that was developed by some people last year, where they took that planetary health plate that we saw earlier, and they turned it into an index that we can then use to sort of compare how we do towards the planet, how well our diets align with the planetary health diet. So higher
Right.
score means better alignment. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so curious as to like I'm shocked that the urban area has a higher PHDI than the rural area.
Absolutely. And
Is there a reason for that? Yeah.
absolutely. I was me too, I would say. I think there are a couple of things. This diet misses out a couple of things as well, right? We don't take into account the fast food aspect of it all, which we tend to have a lot more at urban areas. The fast food, the ultra processed food, these things are not well taken into account. And I think the main reason why the rural is lower than urban is because of the higher amounts of just like white rice, white bread. And I think that is the main factor that's pushing rural diets a little bit lower than urban diets.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
The lack of whole grains, I would say. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, I'll reserve more questions for later. If anyone
No
has
problem.
like any questions, just like put it in the chat. We'll have a Q&A after this. Or if there's a burning question right now, just like raise your hand. But if not, we'll just move on to Eddie. So yeah. Cool. Thanks, Dr. Nadia. Thanks so much. That's a brilliant presentation. We'll get back to you again
Thank you.
in a bit. All right. So, the next speaker. So I met Eddie at an organic farm in Kedah, in July. So that was like the first time that we met, and like, it was just it's an agroecological retreat kind of thing, and we learned to plant basically paddy. So I got really a hands-on experience on paddy farming, organic paddy farming, mind you. So yeah, Eddie, or well, his full name is Izidi Amir or Izedi. I don't know how to pronounce. But yeah, I call him Eddie. We can call him Eddie. So he's the managing director of Diri Bumi Ecological Services based in Taiping, Perak. So with a background in environmental science and permaculture, he has worked with many grassroots communities in rural areas, primarily with the indigenous communities in developing a resilient agro ecosystem that includes paddy, agroforestry, vegetable gardens. He has been appointed as a secretariat for the Community Seeds Reserve Initiative, a platform to gather seed savers across the country. And he was selected as a youth biodiversity leader under the ASEAN Youth Biodiversity Program in 2020, and is now the coordinator of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network Peninsula Malaysia chapter. Nice work. Good job. Congrats. So yeah, dipersilakan Cik Eddie.
Okay. Thank you, Diana, and also Dr. Nadia. Very excellent presentation. Okay, I just share my screen. Okay. At first, when I first get this title of the discussion, I was like, "Oh, can plant-based diet solve food insecurity?" I feel like it's quite not an easy thing for the implementation lah. But we just go through the presentation first. Okay, okay, this is already mentioned by Diana. So mostly I work with the indigenous communities that live in remote areas, still in their customary lands. And this presentation actually more focused on the data that I got for this presentation is mostly from before pandemic and also in the early years of the pandemic. But then there's also a reflection on the post-pandemic and also what's the current situation that we are facing right now, and also in terms of the community resilience and the experience that I have involved with these communities. So I'll put them into this discussion. So under Diribumi, we have worked with 13 communities, 3 schools and 1 universities. So these communities, they include those indigenous communities and also rural communities. We work on paddy, organic paddy, and then also on and I saw someone from Olive House here. Okay, because one of our farm that we worked together before, and actually the same with one that where I met Diana. We were actually producing and selling the rice for Olive House at that time. And then these communities, they are also like spread in different states. So I work with communities in Penang, Kedah, Perlis, Perak, Pahang, and also in Kelantan. So in different states, but still we can see like pattern involving regarding the diets of the people. And then back in my hometown, I established a community composting station because we want to reduce the amount of food waste going straight to the landfill. So we, instead of sending them straight, so we collect them just from 4 points of collection. We can collect almost like 1 ton per month of food waste. And then we took the waste and we feed to our worms lah. We have like thousands of worms, and just feeding them this food waste, and then we sell them back to this zero waste store in Taipei. Under the Community Seeds Reserve Initiative, I have gathered almost 50 seed savers all across the country. So I also been starting this year lah. I've been visiting one after another seed savers. So for seed savers, actually, it's not only the seeds that we focus here. It's not only in terms of the biji benih, the seeds, but also from other plant propagation materials like tubers, cuttings. We include that as well. And from the data collected of the inventory that we did with the seed savers, we pull all the data into our website. It's called benihcommunity.com. You can check that out. In this website, you can search for any kind of plants that you want to look for lah. And then our next mission is actually we want to enhance youth capacity and participation in agroecology sectors because we see that there is a lack of access for the youth when they want. Actually, there's a pattern when the youth wanted to go to agriculture, they always wanted to have like organic minded, want to pursue in this field, but somehow from the agriculture department it's quite difficult to assess about this information. So for next year project, we target to build this capacity lah, and also to help in mainstreaming biodiversity. So the situation with food security in Malaysia. Actually, from the global perspective, we actually have a Global Food Security Index, GFSI, but it is still debatable because the one that funding the index is actually from the Corteva Agroscience. They are like one of the big multinationals. But at least we still have one index for us to refer to lah. So this index, they focus on the 4 issues that they are affordability, availability, quality and safety, and sustainability and adaptation. So in each countries, they do like measure these different issues. For example, in Malaysia, we actually rank at 41st among the 113 countries around the world, and 30th in terms of affordability. I'm not really sure if our food is really cheap or not. Then availability at the 56, and then quality and safety 38, and sustainability and adaptation at 57. For the previous year, we are actually ranked at, this is for 2022. For 2021, we are ranked at 39, and then we dropped to 41st for overall score. And to put this into perspective, the first 5 countries, they are from the global north, and then we have at 6 the first ASEAN countries, Japan, and then 28 is Singapore, a place with no land. Malaysia, we are at 41st together with Saudi Arabia. So it's like a very contrast. Like Saudi Arabia, we always imagine the country like desert, and then Malaysia is like very large tropical countries. But still, for the food security, we are at the same level. And this is because of food security in terms of the global level. It's not about just about what can we produce, but it's also about what kind of food that we manage to trade with other countries. So Singapore, they are very well in these sectors. They don't have land, but they are placed at 28, like further away from Malaysia. And then Russia, big countries at 43rd. So you can you know figure this out. For ASEAN countries, the first one is Singapore, second is Malaysia, and I think uh, for Thailand and Indonesia, they are placed at 63rd and 64th, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the overall score. So in terms of affordability, we score at 80%. Still debatable. I think our food is quite pricey nowadays. But this is uh, a survey based on 2021. No, 2022. So it's not updated. And availability, we are placed at below average in sufficiency of food supply. There's a scarcity of food, and then slightly above average in access to agricultural inputs. This is the same way goes to organic inputs. It's like we still cannot get reliable supplies, and some of our inputs for the chemical agriculture is sourcing from other countries, and we don't really produce the chemical stuff here in Malaysia, except from the Petronas one in Kedah. And then we like in empowering women farmers, also like in agriculture research and development. I think this is since the 80s, when the country is shifting towards being an industrial country. So we are like we have the institution like Mardi to do the research and stuff, but there's still not very, how to say, we can't really see the impact lah, not very huge. But mainly nowadays they are focused more on the new paddy varieties, like IS 81 or something, the one that can produce a higher yield. And then we also lack of supply chain infrastructure, because we are not having a centralized system. For example, those market in Kuala Lumpur, like Pasar-Pasar Selayang or Putrajaya, they because some of my friends they are farmers, so they say all of those produce sold at those market, they are actually sourced from another states like Pahang, like maybe 200 kilometers away from there. So there's a lot that we need to improve lah. And then in quality and safety, we are below average on dietary diversity. Like the kids nowadays always like chicken, less fibers or vegetables. Slightly above average of share of non-starch food. And okay, this one, I don't know why in the graph it's like the share of sugar consumption is really low. But I think we all like eat, mainly sweet stuff here. And then for sustainability and adaptation, we have a very bad political commitment to adaptation. In terms of climate finance flows, we don't see any. And then a national agricultural adaptation policy, yes, we have it already. Sustainable agriculture and early warning measures. Actually, this year I'm a bit lucky because I have the opportunities to learn more about policy making process and da, da, da. This because previously I just worked with communities, but then I feel like there's a gap between the policymakers and then people working in the grassroots. So I was lucky because there's some of the civil society organization helping me to engage with the policymakers, and actually our policy on paper they are very nice, but somehow the implementation part is a bit difficult, and also like to push it into sustainable agriculture stuff also it's not really the main issue right now. The main issue right now is like to have higher yields of every produce, and early warning measures is not really being highlighted, maybe because we don't have that much catastrophe compared to other countries, except for those annual floods. So our countries they produce this self-sufficiency ratio. This is the latest one. I can get only 2020. But as we can see here, the lowest one is mutton 9.6. Then okay, beef 22%, and then rice at only 63%. And actually this year we managed to get 69% of rice production compared to the ratio of the self-sufficiency. And this is quite alarming actually, because in other rice producing countries, people are exporting their rice, but we don't even have enough for our own consumption. And because of this, okay, there will be more stories after this. And also you can check for more than 100%, we have spinach, cucumber, brinjal, chicken and duck eggs, all the fruits. Okay, for vegetables, we are quite good lah actually. Lady's finger, long beans, sweet corns. Okay, our food insecurity is actually affected by the geopolitical situation. For example, the one happens in Ukraine, the Ukraine and Russia conflicts that cause us higher price for some of the agricultural inputs, and also the price of wheat. We can't really grow wheat here, but there's an effort in Indonesia like trying to grow wheat in tropical countries, but we still don't have any results since 2018. I think they've been trying. And then climate crisis in exporting countries, for example, in India and also Vietnam, some of the region they have floods, and also some of the region they have extreme heat. So we have less. They have less production, so they want to limit their production. That's why we are having the problem right now with the price increase of rice. And actually, this is happening because of the political imbalance in our country as well. Because when we have this political imbalance, it looks like our administration is a bit it's not strong. So this cartel, they can play their game lah. For example, the recent rice crisis, it is actually happening because of there are some of the factories that are processing the local rice. They are sorok. How to say this in English? They hide some of the rice, and it's not some, actually it's like one factories they have for like 100 tons of it. So like past few weeks, their friends like buying new rice in the packet, but then when they check, it's already like getting moldy and stuff. So it's like very not good. Tinggal. Okay. So communities that are most vulnerable to food poverty, currently for city dwellers living in high density areas, they are quite affected because they are further distance from fresh produce. They have no land to farm. I visited some of the communities initiative in having urban farming in Kuala Lumpur, but I think out of 60 farms that they are trying to establish with the DBKL, only like 10% of them surviving because of many different issues lah. And then they have a higher prices of fresh produce because problem in access and affordability, and the domination of ultra processed foods and drinks in the food systems. You know, for example, kids nowadays they are more easy to get those processed foods and thought is the real food. Sometimes people in the city they don't even they eat chicken every day, but never see the real life chicken in front of them. How about communities in rural areas? Are they not affected? Okay, rural communities usually they have wild foods and still practice foraging, although they are not indigenous, but this practice is still happening because we have our own traditional food called ulam. So practice of foraging of ulam still I can say 30% of the people still practicing it. And then protein mostly coming from fishes. It's either from the farm one or from the wild. And for traditional agriculture system, like the traditional homestead, always have chicken around the house. So this is a picture of me in the one of the community working on the newly established farm in Kelantan, I think. So back to the main question. Can plant-based diet solve food insecurity? What do you guys think? Okay, this is my own opinion lah. Because we actually need to focus more on the transitioning. We know that maybe some of us really want to have a life of, the whole world just eating vegetables and whatnot. But to reach there, we need to transition first lah. Especially on the highlighting the ethical treatment to farm animal. Having a huge scale farm animal in Malaysia is something new actually. We have those big chicken barn starting in the 80s, but not for the kambing, the goat, and the cow, because goat we can still get them cheaper by exporting. Then also for importing, and then also for the cow, still relatively low price. We got them from India, but most of them they are not the beef, but branded as beef. Then we also need to promote the growing and consumption of our traditional perennial foods, ulam. it's very easy because if we just plant them once and then we can harvest them so many times. And that also relate to the practice of agroecology because we disturb not many time the soil. The soil is not being disturbed frequently. And also we can promote eat less meat and promote integrated farming lah. Because integrated farming they actually like trying to optimize the waste coming out from the farming system lah. And also I would like to highlight because I can see that actually most of the traditional communities they are actually flexitarian. They don't eat meat every day. So maybe like in a week, only like 2 or 3 days, people eating meat. And this is also the same with our Prophet. I am a Muslim, so Prophet Muhammad, he's also practicing flexitarian. He eat meat, but it's quite rarely. The same goes to the Malay communities. We back then we eat meat very less, like occasionally maybe during events like kenduri kahwin or something. So this is actually quite doable lah, to promote eat less meat and trying to bring back the joy of our traditional practice. Okay, I think that's all from me.
Thanks, Eddie. You're very optimistic about promoting the
It is
last
possible.
one.
Last one.
Or maybe I am pessimistic because like I see a lot, even like Malays nowadays, like people eat meat like every day. I think that's kind of like the whole Western diet influence and the fast food, the high processed food, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's very optimistic. But hopefully, yeah, we keep that optimism on. And yeah, thanks for your sharing presentations. Really clear and helpful. And I guess like from both of your presentations, Nadia and Eddie, like it seems to be like food sufficiency and food security relies heavily on like a majority like plant-based or plant-rich diet, vegetables, fruits. And also, I think one important point I got is like the trade agreements, like the point by Eddie on like Singapore is higher than Malaysia in the food security index. Yeah, global food security index. It's like that's very interesting. I never really like thought about that. So yeah, we'll get to the questions. I think there's a couple in the chat. Okay, so the first one by Reshmi. It's a challenge to promote healthy food when there is unlimited supply of unhealthy processed food, which are affordable, accessible, and convenient. This is alarming. The market is also profit-driven. How are policymakers engaged and involved in making a systemic change in curbing highly processed food while promoting healthy whole food? So, Nadia, do you want to answer this?
I think probably Eddie has a bit more insight, but I can I think maybe the one thing I would say is Malaysia is famously known for making a lot of plans, and we have excellent plans. We have dietary guidelines and everything is in place, but we don't have the implementation or the ways to evaluate whether our plans are working. And I think that's the major flaw here. Also, I think it's the whole way in which we work. For example, if we talk about a if we're doing a charity donation drive where we're collecting food for, low-income communities or poor families, we're gonna stock up on Maggi, on Milo, on all these cheap but shelf-stable items. And because that's what it is, it's shelf-stable. It's very hard to give them produce. So I think once we start thinking about how do we better do these things, how do we, use technology or use new advances in research to help us get the proper food to the people who need it, and that's when we can start to see a change. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Eddie, do you want to add on that? How are policymakers engaged and involved in making a systemic change? If you have any input.
Okay, basically the government, they always have this policy lah. For example, in Malaysia we have the National Food Security Policy. It's called Action Plan from 2021 to 2025. They have like 5 core strategies, like but actually in terms of the systemic change on the healthy food consumption, they are one core strategy lah that they're trying to focus on. It's really in enhancing food safety and quality. But for the time being, I think they are really focusing on to achieve the sufficiency level first, and then comes the safety. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, on that, like kind of like I think the similar vein, like I do have a question. I think Nadia mentioned a bit about like, different to change the food system, like you need to involve like stakeholders, and like the trade agreements and changing livelihoods. But like how can like all those different groups work together? Like all the researchers like yourself and like grassroots representatives, leaders like Eddie, for example, or in the government, like how do you see like all those groups working together? Like, is there a possibility even?
What was that question for me? Or Eddie?
Well, Eddie, both of you.
Go ahead, Eddie.
Okay. For example, from a civil society organization perspective, we have this one central platform. It's called Malaysia Food Sovereignty Forum, Forum Kedaulatan Makanan Malaysia. So under this forum, we have many other civil society organizations. We gather together and we also discuss about the current scenarios and how we can improve this. For example, if the government coming out with a new agenda, we will have a discussion among us, and then trying to put them in a bigger perspective. If this agenda going to bring us up or bring us down, something like that. And we also have like many engagement with the grassroots. So from this one platform, we can actually access to the parliament or to the government bodies to express our intention.
Nadia, would you like to add?
Sure. I just to add, I think just maybe a couple of months ago, I was part of a really interesting exercise actually that was held by KPKM, so Kementerian Pertanian and Keterjaminan Makanan, so the Food Security Ministry. And they had engaged Ipsos to sort of conduct a stakeholder engagement to develop the food security blueprint for the country. So I'm not sure if that's out yet or not, but it was a nice exercise in terms of they really got a lot of people together. They got the researchers, they got the business owners, farmers, or people from various ministries. And they had several consultative processes. So I think there is growing emphasis on bringing people together, bringing everyone to the table to come up with this shared outcome of or a process that can drive us forward. Yeah, so hopefully that gives us a good outcome. Let's watch out for that.
Nice. Well, that's really great to hear that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. We have a question from Aina. When we talk about transitioning to plant-based foods, i.e. eat less meat, is there any studies that actually show how much less meat? And also, how much time do we have to transition, actually, to see the real changes? Yeah.
So the Planetary Health diet actually does give you some indication of how much meat you should be taking as a proportion to your calorie intake. And that's because calorie intake is the recommendations for calorie intake is going to be different across countries, across different population groups. Even in Malaysia, there are different recommendations for men and women. So what it's telling us, I think for meat consumption, it's like I have to go back and check, but I think we're talking about like 1.5% of your total calorie intake should be meat. Yeah, but I can check those numbers. Please don't quote me on that. We'll get back to you. In terms of how much time, I don't think there are any studies that actually look at that, but it'd be really interesting to do that. And I think that's what we need to see. But the quick answer is just do it now. Just now, right now. Change now. But yeah, I think that would be an area of research that we should undertake.
Thanks. Eddie, do you want to add? Okay, cool. Yeah, so we've been talking about like eating like less meat and more of the plant-based food, and like I think Dr. Nadia, you shared like how individual action is effective, right? Yeah. Well, like it seems all this discussion, like it's more focused towards like health, and I know that Malaysians are more receptive to their health instead of like just talking about the animal agriculture industry per se, as it's like the impacts of it. So in your opinion, like do we need to like how much more like do we need to include animals like in the discussion of food security, and why?
Oh, tough question. I think so at the heart of it, these are all connected, right? Our health is connected to the health of environment, and that includes, the animals that live in our environment. It's about I can't really I'm not animal advocate per se, but I don't believe in animal cruelty. So I think at the fundamental level, we all share the same goals. And if it helps you to message it that way, then by all means go ahead and do that. Yeah, but sorry, I don't know if I am helping in this conversation. But yeah, I think if it's a cause that's close to you, these are all linked, you can talk about it together, certainly.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, because like also Eddie presented like indigenous people, they are mostly like the very self-sufficient. They use like so they are mostly like they have plant rich diets. Like I also like learned about this through my other like friend. And like if they need like animals, like they fish, like that's basically how they've been like foraging or like sustaining themselves. So I think in a broader sense, I think it's the whole Western concept of like the factory farming. I think that's the thing that's very kind of like destructive to the environment and also of course the animals. Like I think Eddie, you mentioned like it's not very prevalent in Malaysia per se, but like we import kind of like a lot of like meat as well.
Lot.
No, not
Yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that help? worsen food security? Do you think, or like, how does that play? Do you know how much like that plays into like food security, sufficiency, and all that?
I'm not really sure. But I can say that, we are like increasing our carbon footprints year after year
Mm-hmm.
because of this, and also that we don't know how actually these animals are being farmed, because when we got them, it's already like big. Or are they farmed, or are they wild, or we are not sure. Even for beef, for some, they are actually not beef, they are from the kerbau, buffalo. But then it's not being properly labeled. They are just labeled them as beef. So there are many other underlying issues lah. And also for the indigenous communities, although they are already like facing having the sufficiency, but somehow in Peninsular Malaysia, the native customary land rights is not being recognized. So they are having less and less roaming areas. So these are actually posing a threat in the food security for them lah. Yeah.
Mm. Thanks. Okay, that's so insightful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you don't mind,
sure.
I think just lending to your thoughts earlier about, how um in indigenous communities, you farm your own fish and you get your own chicken and things like that. I think one of the ways in which I think the animal rights movement can come in and talk about food security and kind of help climate change is that, in urban settings, your food comes from a supermarket. You associate chicken with a piece of asbestos and a chicken on it. You don't really think about a chicken per se,
Yeah.
So that sort of perceptions and thinking, I think, there's a lot of work to be done around that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. That is so important. Yeah, I think like maybe the focus is more towards like the urban areas to kind of like change the diets, for the environment and health as well. So like if you could like kind of like I don't know, summarize or package it, like what's the call to action, I guess, for like how can like a person in the urban area kind of like change, like how easy it is to change the lifestyle, individual change, that kind of thing. Yeah, if
I
that
don't
makes
think it's
sense.
easy. Yeah, it makes sense. It's not an easy thing to do. Behavior change never is. And because a lot of food is how we are tied to our community, to our family, to our culture. So changing that is quite a difficult thing to do, right? But I think we start by making conscious decisions about what we choose to purchase, what we choose to consume. It won't happen overnight, but slowly, you start to you reach for the red meat and you think, hmm, you know, what's my carbon footprint here? And you might just pull your hand back. So change is slow. It will take time. Yeah. But I think it's possible. I think especially with young people, they are starting to see the urgent need to change a lot more than the older generation. So there is hope for us yet.
Thanks. Yeah. So I guess to answer like our whole big question, like as Eddie put it out just now, like can plant-based diets like solve food insecurity? Is it a yes? Eddie?
Yeah, and another one, another one point.
Okay.
Because I have the opportunities to visit like few of the successful urban farms, and actually I think the promotion of having community urban farms together in the city area is actually very very helpful to see the shift of the dwellers to change their diet. I can give you two. Maybe you can visit this. You guys can visit these two places. is called Garden 8 in Gombak, and another one is Reproductive Urban Farming in Kramat. So these communities, they've been telling me that the younger generation started to come and so help them with the farming and and then also they also shift a bit their diet, like trying to utilize more from what they trying to produce. So this is actually like bring hope lah to this scenario. And also this community farm, they also not only having the shifting diet part, but also in bring back the community value, like people know each other back again, and know, oh, this guy doing what, this woman doing what. So it's very nice to do that lah, community urban farming. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Does anyone in the audience have any other questions? You can just like raise your hand if you want to just speak. But if not, like, yeah, keep sharing links. I think, yeah, Dr. Nadia and Eddie, if you want to share some links, useful links, or where they can find you, or if they want to connect with you further, that'll be great. Yeah, if there's no other questions, you can like end it here. I've asked my fair share of questions already. And thank you so much, both of you, for sharing. It's really insightful. And I hope that we can all shift to a plant-based or plant-rich diet collectively. And those animal advocates here can do their part to promote more of that as well. So yeah, can we like have a group picture? Wait, first I'm gonna just share a few links for like feedback. And also we have Animal Alliance Asia has a conference coming up. So this is a great chance for you to learn more about the animal justice movement in Asia. Yeah, it's happening on November 25th and 26th that weekend. So it'd be nice for you to join and learn more.